So you may be asking yourself, what is audio? When you hear that word audio, what exactly is it referring to um, as far as music, sound, and maybe you're a little unclear. So we're going to go over this very basic about what is audio. So audio refers to sound or the reproduction of sound. And this happens when there's a disturbance and there's energy passed through a medium, such as air molecules, or water. Um, and this motion usually occurs, it always occurs in a wave. That's where we get the term waveform from the audio file, because audio travels in a wave. And audio refers to the frequencies that we can hear. There's a lot of frequencies that are too low or too high for us to hear, but we want to talk about the audible frequencies. Speaking of which, that's between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Um, and hertz is just a unit of measure for frequency. And we'll talk about what frequency is in a little bit too. So this is our range of hearing. When you get down to 20 hertz, 20 hertz is very low. You can't really hear pitch down there. You can feel it more than you can hear it. Um, and when you get up, 20,000 hertz is really high. As you get older, your ears, you start declining as far as your ability to hear and perceive higher frequencies. That's why you might hear your grandparents say, "What's all this boom, boom, boom? It's just so boomy and thumpy, that music." Well, it's because they've lost some of the clarity, or depending on the person, a lot of the clarity in the higher frequency range, and so all they hear are the lower frequencies. When we hear sound, we're hearing oscillations, basically, or cycles. The way the wave goes, it's a cycle, and so the amount of cycles per second is going to be the frequency. And so if we have a faster oscillation, we're going to have a higher frequency. The wave form is going to be really close together. When you have a slower oscillation, it's going to be a lower frequency, and the wave is going to be very long. So let's talk about some terms you might need to know, or I might say in these videos that maybe you're not familiar with. Obviously, frequency, we talked about, it's measured in hertz, and it's the speed of oscillations per second. And this is also known as pitch. So, for instance, when we look at the pitch bend wheel in Ableton Live, when we're pitching it down, we're slowing down the speed of oscillation per second. So we're getting fewer hertz. Now, when we pitch it up, we're increasing the amount of hertz. We're increasing the speed of oscillations per second, the cycles per second. That's what we talk about as far as pitch. Decibel, you might have heard this term, also called dB sometimes, but it's just a unit of measurement for a sound's amplitude or volume. So sometimes they'll say, let me get 3 dB less of this or that or whatever. That's basically what that is. A decibel, it's the unit of measurement for volume. And level also refers to volume. So if I say the level's too loud, or we need to increase the level on something, basically I'll be talking about volume. Clipping. Clipping is basically distortion that happens when an audio level is too loud. So let's say, for instance, I have a bass in Ableton Live. I start cranking that volume way, way up. Eventually, it's going to go from a smooth sound to it's going to start sounding broken. We're going to hear this distortion, which we don't want. Now, there are some distortions that we do like, which is for electric guitars, things of that nature. But we're taming that, and we're using distortion as a color for the sound. But when we don't want the distortion there, it sounds very unpleasant, and basically that's what clipping is. All right, so I hope this was helpful. Again, there's many more terms, and there's so much more to talk about in terms of audio, but this is just a basic run through um, of audio, how we're going to use it, some of the terms I might use in these videos. All right, so we'll see you next time. So something that we use all the time in electronic music and just music production in general is MIDI. Now, MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And basically what this does is right here. It allows computers, devices, and electronic musical instruments to communicate with one another. It's like a different language. So it's not audio, but it's like a language that these devices use to communicate with and pass information from one to another. Now, when you have a stream of MIDI data, it's going to carry over some qualities of the sound, whatever you recorded on it. It's going to carry over pitch and notation. So basically, if you play C, D, E, F on the keyboard, and that MIDI data is written, it's going to retain the pitch, the notation. It's going to retain the velocity, which is sort of like volume, but not quite. But let's just call it the intensity of the note. It's going to carry over the tempo information, time information, so how fast you played it. It's going to retain that. How slow, rhythms, things of that nature. It's also going to carry over panning, left or right, sustain, etc. So imagine this. Imagine I pull up a MIDI clip in Ableton Live, and I assign to that MIDI track a piano sound. So it's a sampled piano. It's just a piano sound. It's not audio. When I play the MIDI track and I record, it's recording MIDI data. Now, if I took that stream of MIDI, I can change the instruments to it. So I can make it sound like an electric piano and it plays the same thing, or change it to a guitar and it plays the exact same thing that I played. It's just changing the sound that I'm assigning to it. Now, with an audio file, obviously, you can't change the sound of an audio file. So if I put a microphone to a kick drum and I hit that kick a couple times, that's what I get. I can't go in and just put a different kick on and have it play in the same rhythm. It doesn't work quite like that. So MIDI is very cool. There's a lot of things you could do with it that we do with it, and it's just very cool. So anyway, very basic, but that's basically what MIDI is. All right, now that we've gone over some of the basics of Ableton Live, we've toggled through the session view and the arrangement view. We've talked about some of the global controls up here. Let's talk about the tracks. So we have audio tracks and MIDI tracks. Basically, to create an audio track, you can either go up here, create, insert audio track. You can press Command T to create an audio track. Or if you have an existing audio track, you can simply right-click it and click Duplicate. All right, so for a MIDI track, same thing. You can either come up here, create, insert MIDI track. You can press Shift Command T on a Mac to create the MIDI track, or duplicate. Or a quicker way to duplicate is Command D. Now, if you have an instrument, a software instrument in this track here, and I duplicate it, whatever's in here is going to be in the new track. It's not just going to create the track, it's going to create the track along with everything that's in the track. All right, so let's start on MIDI. So if we come over here, here's our software instruments, our sounds. So let's go to drums. Now, you can see here, this looks like a box, and this right here, you could see the waveform. That shows you that it's an audio file. and you could see by the extension AIF. So for MIDI, we're looking for these guys. So simply drag the sound you want right in there, and it comes up down here. And we talked about this. This will be the piano roll. If I create a MIDI clip, double click. Here's our piano roll. Click over here, we see our instrument, and this is what we inserted into our MIDI track. So if I duplicate it, I'm going to have the same track again. Okay, so if we create an audio track, something interesting happens. Notice how it won't allow us to put this sample that we just put in the MIDI track. It won't allow us to put it in the audio track. We need audio files for the audio track. So if you look down here, we see a waveform. We could bring that in there. Double click it, and you can see it. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. You could see the waveform. There it is. All right, just like we talked about before. So that's the audio file on the audio track. Again, to duplicate it, Command D. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to have the same sound. And that's the basics of audio and MIDI tracks. I mean, when you start layering and adding more tracks and adding them to your arrangement view, you're going to get familiar with it. You're probably do the shorthand. It's a lot easier. So on a Mac, Command T, audio track. Shift Command T is a MIDI track. Helps do less mouse clicks. So anyways, that's the basics of audio and MIDI track setup, and we'll see you on the next video. Now, one method you could use to write in Ableton Live is to use loops. Now, some people use loops, for example, drum loops, as their primary drums. Other people just use it as a quick way to get ideas down. But either way, here's how it works. So we have our audio track, and depending on which version of Ableton you have, or what packs and sample packs you've downloaded, you may or may not have some loops. But right now I have a pack here called Loop Masters Mixtape. So if I go to the drum and down tempo, I click it, it plays a preview of it for me so I can hear exactly what the groove is going to sound like. Alright, so if we take one, drag it into our audio track, we could see the loop down here. If we click play, it plays. And then if we adjust our tempo, it was at 80. If we put it up to 104, it's going to adjust the speed of the audio track, of the loop, to your tempo that you assign. Okay, and so once that's in there, obviously, copy, put it in here into the arrangement view and start moving it around, doing what you need to do with that. If you want to create more, you could duplicate this track. Let's say we have our drums, now we want to add some keys. That might sound cool. So we put that in there. Except we can hear that the tempo that it was originally at, we're trying to manipulate the tempo, and it's not sounding good. It's not comfortable with that because it's comfortable at 174. So let's go ahead and pick a different sound. Try that one. So you get the idea. So if we want these to play together, we just play them. All right, not great, but you kind of get the idea of how you can insert loops, combine loops, and obviously if we want that panned, we can pan this over to the left a little bit. Pan the drums to the right. Do whatever you feel like. So anyways, whether you're using this as a primary creative resource or just a way to get ideas down, this is a great way to use loops. All right, so we talked about loops. We talked about using loops, inserting loops into your audio track, how they could be used with your own ideas or as a starting point for some of your ideas. But let's talk now about a method that we're going to use a lot, which is using the software instruments to record. With the software instruments, it's pretty cool because if you have an instrument here and you play something, the rhythm and everything is going to stay. If you don't like the sound of the instrument, you could just change the instrument, but it keeps the notes. So you have many, many possibilities. But let's talk about how we do it. So click over here on this arrow. All right. And we're going to see all these different things: sounds, drums, instruments, audio effects. We want to go to instruments. Now, when you're here, you'll see all these different instruments. Now, each one has its own set of sounds. I mean, analog has a million bass sounds, pads, strings, and that goes the same for all these. Let's go to electric. They're not all going to have the same ones, but they're going to have some settings in them. Okay? So to choose a sound, we're going to just click on it. And when you click on it, it allows you to preview it. Let's go to some synths. Also, if you press down on the arrow keys on your computer, it'll just go to the next one. All right, so when you find a sound you like, we'll use that one. Simply click it, drag it over to your MIDI track, and there it is. There's a lot of different parameters you can change and adjust with it, but we're going to leave them the same for right now. Now, when you record, double click it to add your MIDI clip. Your piano roll shows up here. And let's see here, you can either double click the note or use your pencil, play notes like that. Okay, so let's just hear what that sounds like. It's probably not going to sound good. We just clicked in notes without really listening, but let's just hear what it sounds like. Grammy. I'm just kidding. All right, so we have our melody line in here that we played. Let's say we like it, but maybe the sound just isn't quite meshing. It's not quite what you want. You could just come over here, preview. Let's say you like that one. Simply double click. Make sure that your MIDI clip is highlighted here. Double click the sound and it automatically changes the sound, and you still retain what you put in here in the piano roll. So let's listen to that. And there it is. Now let's say you like that. You want to add that to the arrangement view. Click here, Command C to copy. Press Tab. Come over here, highlight there, and paste. And now what you just played is going to show up right there. And you can drag it out to duplicate it, or you can highlight it, press Command D, and it duplicates it. And there's your track right there, is your MIDI clip. Now let's say I want to have a couple bars of this, but then when I get to here, I want it to change. So what we could do Copy that. Paste it there. And now this is going to be a separate clip than this. So we could change this. All right. And it's going to sound like this. But it's not going to change what we already played here. So when we get to here, it's going to be different. All right. So now that we have that, let's go over here. Let's add another track just for repetition. Shift-Command-T, create a MIDI track. And let's choose one of these pianos. We'll check that one. Drag it in. Your piano's here. Right here. No clip selected, so we got to double click to create a MIDI clip. Now our piano roll shows up. So another way to record into here, if you remember us talking about the global controls, this keyboard button here. If you don't want to click it in, or you don't want to keep previewing like this, when this is highlighted here, this button, it allows you to use your computer keyboard as this piano right here. And so I'm playing A through L on the second line of the keyboard to play the white notes, and then right above it is going to be the sharps and flats. And so you can play something in there, and you can record like that. So let's go ahead and do that just for fun. Right now I want the click on for this because we're going to be playing it. I want 1 bar of count in. And this is what we're going to press right here for record. So ready? Here we go. And we were only on 1 bar, so if we change this down here to 4 bars, we could play more. So let's try it again. All right, and there's our MIDI clip that we just played in. So let's copy that, bring it over here. This is our new track over here, so let's put it there. So now we have 2 clips that we played in. They're not in the same key and they're not going to sound good right now. But basically this is how you can use the software instruments to create music. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. We'll see you next time. All right, so let's say you're ready to start on your track. You're going to write some music. Everybody's got a different workflow. Some people like to start with some chords or a chord progression. Others have a melody idea that they get down first. And some people like to start with drums, which is usually what I do. Sometimes I'll start with chords, but usually it's I start with a drum beat. It might be basic, but it's an idea just to get the rhythm and the tempo down, and maybe and kind of get the feel down there too. So in this video, we're going to talk about some easy ways to record drums in Ableton Live. So the first thing we want to do is create a MIDI track, which we have here, or like you know, Shift-Command-T. Come over here to our instruments. Now over here, you're going to see a button called Drums. Go ahead and click that, and we're going to insert this drum rack. There it is. Now with this, you can load individual drum sounds into these trigger pads right here, and you can see there's a ton of them. Or you could take a loop from here, load it into here, and it separates it into each beat. And there might be some musical elements on these loops as well, and I'll separate those out too. So let's go ahead and try that just to see what it sounds like. All right, so let's take that one. We like the way that sounds. We might not want to use it exactly like that, but we like some of the drum hits and how they sound, some of the samples. So let's go ahead and pull this down here. All right, and you can see it's highlighted here. That's where all the drum samples lie. So it split it up. All right. And now when we insert a MIDI clip, these are going to show up in the piano roll. So you can see them all here. All right, so then we can play them as we see fit. If you look over here, just like normal, each one you can adjust some parameters. So let's say that one, I wanted it to be shorter. I can adjust it. This one, I wanted to start it down here a little more. Maybe adjust some of these attack sustain, holds it out longer. So whatever. So anyway, you can adjust any of these that you feel like based on what you want to hear. All right, so that's one way to do it. And like I said, in our piano roll, we can either click in notes, all right, so we just clicked in some notes there and you can play it to see how it sounds. All right, just like that. So that's one way to do it. Now another way to do it, if you're more specific and you want really specific drum sounds, let's create a new track. And we can get rid of this one. All right, we're going to do the same thing, insert a drum rack. Now, if we go to here, drum hits, or drum samples, or if you have just single hits, claps, kicks, things like that, you can also do this. Let's go to kick and pick a kick drum. So if we drag that right there, bam, shows up right there on this pad. Let's pick another one. Okay. All right, so we got our kicks. Let's pick a clap. We'll just pick this one. Put that right there. Some bells. Just for fun. Now this one, I feel like the volume's a little loud on this one, so I'm just going to come over here to the volume and we're going to turn that down. That's better. All right, and so basically you just go through, pick the sounds you like. Okay, so let's say this is basically what we want. This clap, I want to level up a little bit. I want to pan it to the right a little bit. Let's see here. Finger cymbal. What should we do for this one? Turn some reverb up. Same with this guy. Let's go ahead. All right, so we got our pads filled with sounds that we like. Let's create a MIDI clip. We see them here. I'm going to tap the tempo I want. All right. And so let's punch in some drums here. claps in. All right, so we got a little beat. Let's hear what it sounds like. All right, let's say we like that. Copy this. Whoopsie. Make sure our pencil tool's not on when we're highlighting. Paste it into there. We could see it down here. We can make it as long as we want it. And that's basically how you record drums using the drum rack. That's how I like to do it, at least. It allows me to be really creative and put the kicks and snares and percussion that I want rather than having to use a pre-made drum set. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful, and we'll dive a little deeper into this later on when we do a demonstration and we write a song. All right, see you next time. Let's talk a little bit more about the keyboard. I'm talking about the keyboard on your computer. We're going to talk about something called keyboard mapping very briefly, and we're going to review using the keyboard to play the instrument you select. So if you remember, if we create a MIDI track here, we drag a software instrument right here and we double click to create a MIDI clip. Our piano roll shows up. Now, if this keyboard icon is highlighted, we can use our computer keyboard to trigger these notes. Right? Now, the second row of letters, A, S, D, F, G, H, J, K, L, are going to be the white keys. All right? The row right above it are going to be the black keys. Okay? Now, let's say you're trying to play a chord and you don't like the way it sounds. You think it needs to be an octave lower or maybe an octave higher. Well, on your keyboard, the Z and X buttons are going to bring it up and down an octave. So Z is going to bring it down an octave. So I'm going to play this note. I press Z, and it even shows you where it's being played. One more time down, and it's really low. Okay? Press X, goes back up. Press X again, back up there again. Okay, so Z is going to take it down an octave. X is going to take it up an octave. And just to review, if you remember, an octave is, let's say we're in the key of C, it's from C to C. From one note to the same note, up or down, is going to be an octave. Okay, so obviously when you record in here, you're going to want to have the click track on so you can hear the click as you play your notes. So now let's talk about keyboard mapping very briefly. It's pretty cool. And basically what it is you can assign any mouse click, you can assign a key command on your keyboard to it. So basically what I mean is, let's say, obviously space bar is start and stop. That's standard. But let's say you want the record button to be 6, for instance. So all you do is you hit key right here. Now any button, I'm going to click it and then press the key I want. So I'm going to mouse click on the record button, then click 6. Then from then on, 6 is going to be record. So we click it and then we press 6 and you could see it shows up. So that's assigned now. And as long as this, as long as this is highlighted, you can assign anything. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I want this off button to be M. I click it, press M, there it is. Okay? So now I would obviously, and turn it off when you're done. And if you forget what it is, you just press it and it'll tell you what all your key commands are. I would suggest not using the 2 rows of the keyboard that are used to play the notes. I would suggest not using those not mapping those to any buttons, because that could just get really confusing. All right, so there you go. So you can use your keyboard as a piano, or to trigger whatever sound software instrument you bring into your MIDI track, or you could use keyboard mapping to customize all the icon clicks to your liking to make it faster for your workflow. All right, so anyways, there it is, keyboard.